Hi and welcome to the Gemhawks YouTube channel. I hope you're having a beautiful day today no matter what it is you're doing. For the free wire tutorial here today, I'd like to share with you my right angle link chain. Now this is loosely based on a tutorial I did I think last year or the year before, the horseshoe or large hole bead chain. So this is a slightly smaller variation, no beads involved. It's a reasonably free-flowing chain. It has nice movement in wear. You can obviously change up the size to suit whatever media you're looking to work with that chain, and I'm going to show you the complete step-by-step process to create this. Now obviously you don't want to be suspending yourself from the ceiling using this chain because it contains open and closable loops or simple loops, so it's not as strong as my infinity link chain. However, it's very usable for necklaces, bracelets and of course for drop earrings. So let's head down to the board and take a closer look. So I've just added a home created hook loop. You could use whichever kind of clasp you fancied on the end, or I'm looking to add some hook tutorials later on in the year. This is the nuts and bolts of the chain. So you can see it's a repeating design, and as I say, it actually moves quite fluidly. Sometimes chains are rather rigid and stiff. I know the horseshoe or large hole bead chain that I created was quite stiff. It's perfect for if you're making a very fancy collar or a standard bracelet. It works really well, but less so for a more fluid piece like this. So I've adapted that design to create the right angle link chain. So if I just unhook that and lay it across the top, you'll be able to refer to that anytime you fancy. The wire that I'm going to be using is 1mm or 18 gauge, and I've cut a series of approximately 15 lengths of wire, 1mm or 18 gauge wire. This is round. This is a medium copper I'm working with today, and these are 2-inch lengths. I will be using my multi-step bail making pliers. They're very useful for a product design like this, and I'm going to use step number 3. So what I will do is I'll just give that wire a quick warm through. It doesn't need too much work. We're looking for it to be reasonably sturdy, so I don't want to overdo things. If I pop that in the very middle of those bail making pliers and start rotating around to begin with, you can see one side is slightly higher than the other. Well, we can fix that as we move through, because what we're going to do is cross those 2 wires over, and we're looking for that loop to be in the centre of the wire. So what I tend to do in a project like this is lots and lots of piecework. I'll get myself 15 little sets of loops like this, and I'll try to ensure that they are centralised as closely as possible. The next tool we're going to be using are your favourite chain nose pliers. Now if you wish, you can strengthen that loop shape first, because as we turn these end wires up, they will try to just disturb the shape and size of your circular form down here. So give that a quick squish, and then it will make your life slightly easier later. Now one of those is going to be on top, so we'll start with the one that's on top. So if I pop my chain nose pliers in just above, just past that central point, and push the wire upwards so it comes up at a 12 o'clock bend. It's got a little bit of a kink in it, so I'm just going to straighten that out. Flip the design over, so I'm again working with the upright wire. Now I can put the pliers underneath this time because there's a bit more space, and we're looking for those 2 upright wires to become parallel. So you'll need to hold the wire just slightly away from that point. If you hold it exactly at the point, those 2 wires will sit one on top of each other. If you take those pliers away a little bit further, when you bring that angle up, and if you want that to be nice and sharp, you can take that past the point that you want it, bring it back, and it will sharpen that angle up slightly. And what we're looking for is to have that round form on the end, and 2 tails that come away at the 12 o'clock position, and they should be as close to parallel as matters. Now what you can see at the moment is that one is ever so slightly longer than the other. Very common unless you actually measure by the fraction of a millimetre. So what I tend to do at this stage is just snip that away, so that I have a series of 15 little loops with those sticky uppy alien ears, and they're all the same kind of length. I think I've actually over trimmed it now, but I'm not going to worry because I might take a tiny fraction of measurement of wire off the end in just a moment. So again, I would make 15 of these before I move on to the next stage of the wire, and this is a super easy project for you. So what we will do is grip those two uprights at the point just past where they leave that circular form. If I flash that in the light, you'll see where I'm gripping it. And we're going to pull that away at a bit of an angle, like so. Now I'm going to show you in the first instance how to make a standalone link. This will be your first link. After this, I will show you from this stage again how to put those pieces together. You can retrospectively create all of the links in their complete form and then open up those simple loops to create a complete chain. However, my preference is that we create it in a nice long sequence. So get yourself 15 of those ready and we will move on with the first segment. One of the reasons I prefer to get a series of these little segments created before I move on to the next stage is that quite often I'll forget which number I used on my bell making pliers to create the round form, and I end up with an assortment of sizes. So if you want to repeat the same size throughout, and it does look lovely when you do so, what you will need to do is create yourself a series of these. Now if you end up with too many for what you need, I have relatively small wrists and I used about 15 links plus a clasp to create a bracelet that fits me. So if you start off with 15, just make a mental note of what number you use on your bail makers. Let's head back down to the board and create the next stage. So I've got a couple of little extra links ready to go. I've just got 4 here, but it should give you an idea of how we're going to connect these together. To create our starting point or our first link, you can pop your clasp into one of these. If it's a hook clasp, it can just sit in the U shape down at the bottom here. So add that on and then we will move on to creating some loops just here. Now you'll probably find that you have an ideal size on your round nose pliers or on your bail makers or even indeed on your memory wire pliers. I'm going to see if I can get a loop created with the number 2 on my multi-step bail maker pliers. If you try to make those loops at the same time, you'll find that they can differ slightly in how close to being closed they are. So you may need to just take a second to finish that loop closure so that the end section sits down against the angle change coming away. And this is where the link chain gets its name, being a right angle link chain. That's what I've decided to call it anyway. So we just want to make sure that that's good and straight and that the circular form is at 90 degrees to those 2 loops. Now what I like to do here is just very, very gently ensure that those are centralised. If you need to change the angle, you absolutely can. And indeed that they close all the way down, and you might need to do that from 2 sides because your grip will change on that end of the wire depending on how far away from your pliers you are. So it's easy to do the one on the right. You will probably need to switch it over to do the one on the far side. Just make sure that that's all nice and straight and you're happy with it. And that's your start point, imagining that we've popped your clasp, your hook clasp, or whatever kind of clasp you'd like to use. That's in this bottom link. So to add in the next section, we're going to take the forward bend. That's not quite the same angle, so let's just draw that forwards. And what we're going to do is tuck one of those wires, and you can see I've got the forward bend, which is the complete side of the chain. The open side is at the back, and we're going to slide one of those in like so. I'll just show you that on the overhead like so. Push that all the way into position and you've created your loop and your link. So like I said to you before, it's not the sort of chain that you could use to perhaps lead a donkey if you wanted to. Please don't do that. It's not that strong, but what it is a lovely free moving wearable chain for necklaces and bracelets and for drop earrings. So what we will do now is repeat the same action as we just did a moment ago whilst holding the chain in the non-dominant hand. So let's grab those bail makers again. I think it was number 2, but this is the story of my life, I always forget. We're going to rotate that all the way around until you can close that up at the back, and I will show you that again because that was slightly off camera. Now can you see that my wire must have been just ever so slightly longer on this one, and this is why I like to do this a number of times, because I can show you how you can fix this issue. You can, to a certain degree, unroll that loop and close those end wires back from underneath just by pressing them, But the ideal situation is that all of your wires will be measured and the same. But if you do find that you need to change it slightly, what we're going to do is trim that away at the angle change. One side, then the other side, measure twice, cut once. As my nana used to say, she liked to be a tailor. And what we're going to do then is make sure that those end sections close up neatly. So if you push that one down, show you on this side, try and do that without my hand getting in the light, close that down, and you've created another closed up link. And again, I will just give that a very gentle squish. Normally I will say never put pressure when wire is on top of another wire, but these two are doing the exact same thing, and I'm just putting a little tiny bit of pressure to strengthen it. So I am going to show you that again and try to centralize that on the board slightly more. So let's flip this over so we've got the completed side of the wire. So you've got the sealed side and the open side is underneath. So bringing the tails upwards as the wire flips over and goes immediately downwards, we've got the tails of wire coming upwards. We're going to push that through those two loops and get that to sit into position. So you've always got on the same face the closed section of wire, and on the other face you've got the cut section of wire. So let's flip that over again and use those bail makers. I might try to get that just a little bit higher up to start, rotate that around, and then close that up with my fingers underneath. Remove your bail makers or whatever round form you're using. Might have closed that a little bit tightly, they don't want to get off. There we go. So we're going to have to trim a little bit of wire again on this loop, this link. Give that a quick cut and look again, look twice, cut once. If you do accidentally cut a link in the wrong way, you've probably prepared enough, and hopefully you, unlike myself, will remember what sizes you used on your bail makers. So I'm just going to adapt those loops to make sure that they completely seal, so that the cut end touches the angle change on that right angle link. Give that a bit of a squish and a squish, and I will do for one more just to make sure we cover any and all eventualities that might go wrong. So we've got the wire coming towards us, upwards towards the camera. We've got the sealed side of wire facing upwards on the board. Slide that link into position and pull that round and through. Let's just do that one more time. Grab those bail makers. Let's go for number 2. Rotate those wires around, and if you need help just getting that to be the exact same size every time, you could just make a mental note to yourself what kind of distance there is between the angle change and where you start rotating around. I think that's a little bit too small, so what I'm going to do is just pull that back, rotate the wire back in the opposite direction, and then close it up again from underneath. And I've made that loop just a tiny bit larger, but we will again need to trim a tiny bit of wire away. If you choose to make this chain in a precious metal, then knowing exactly where to cut and what measurement you need is vital. So you can do an example in a copper wire. You could take a measurement of what you've cut away and work out the exact distance that you need to cut, or the exact length that you need to cut your pieces of wire to create that right angle link chain. So for the last time, we're going to close these little links up like so. Get them to sit in exactly the right angle. And it is a little bit of time just to get those to sit nice and neat, and then give them a squish. Now, I did say to you earlier on that you can create all of the links in a position like this, get them all to the same position, and then you can open up, if you want to, you could open up each of these simple loops to add the links and create a chain like that. Let me show you why I prefer not to do that. So we've opened that link up, we put the next link in, making sure that the smooth wire is on top, push it into position, and then we need to close that back down. It's just a tiny bit trickier to get the wire to sit neatly once you've got that link into position. So my preference is to create these links one by one, and you can see that my example piece here is a slightly larger loop that I created the other day. And you can see also how quickly it will build up. It really doesn't take that long, and it's not terribly difficult. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed the right angle link chain. I will pop a little link in the description as well to take you to the Horseshoe large hole bead chain as well, in case you wanted to check that one out. Have yourself the most beautiful day. If you're enjoying the content, please do consider giving me a like and a subscribe to the channel, as it does help us be seen on YouTube. Have yourself a gorgeous day, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.